Dark as night. Good morning. It's about 5:30 or so in the morning here, and I'm just doing a walk. Usually do about 2 mile walk or so. And I saw a comment on the last video. Oh, it's the only comment. Dollar Will was saying, hey, listen, sorry to hear that. But it actually led me down a certain level of thought, or a certain trail of thought. And it's something I didn't explain before, and explain even the reason for the decision, or what we're doing, and the things that you have to do along with it. That video is a bit all over the place. But what you have to do, even in these situations, is you have to think long-term bad, long-term good, short-term bad, short-term good. So even with thinking, so the long-term bad, let's talk about that. The long-term bad is that we can, the business can completely fail and crash, meaning that we would have to pay back equipment loans. We'd have to pay back equipment loans, one. We'd also have to we'd also probably default on rent and stuff like that, get into legal trouble because of that. So when you're dealing with something like that, you have to be like, okay, we need to get this process started. So that's where the panicking starts to really set in the most, when you start to think of those big numbers, because you could be set up to fail, and fail so hard that you're losing maybe 360, you're losing maybe 300 grand in our case, maybe even more. So then you also start to think about long-term good. So long-term good would be, okay, we need to turn this around, and this is where it comes into like belief and stuff. It's like my old elementary school here, by the way. This is where I went to elementary school. But we need to start talking about, or looking at, the long-term good. Well, okay, this is a small business. It took us a year for construction. It took us a year for construction, and we're looking at, so I hate like when people like are out here, it's the freaking morning, and people start flashing their bright ass lights. It's like, I need to bring a flashlight with me. I was like, you guys are a freaking idiot. I hate when people start flashing their bright lights. It's like, okay, I'm black in a predominantly white neighborhood walking. You can go fuck yourself. Fuck out of here, what an idiot. I swear. So we also have to look at the long-term good, and a part of the long-term good in assessing yourself, or putting yourself in a better position, is okay, it's a new business. It took us a year for construction, so there's your setbacks and your obstacles that you have to deal with that. Over that year, that's a long period of time to go through all of that, and then you run out of money. Sometimes you run out of money, you don't make it even to be in open. So we made it past that obstacle. Now we're looking at now we're open. We've been open since about May 14th, 2018. And now we're at the point where it's, what's it called? Been about a year and a half. So I have to look at my business partner and be like, listen, it's been a year and a half. We need to fill this place. If you cannot fill this place, then we need to get rid of it. And some of this stuff is a gut check for him to say, hey, you need to get off your ass on this shit, because you could lose a lot more just because you haven't done what you were supposed to do as a business partner. And you also have to look at, I always try to be fair, because you also have to look at yourself and say the same thing. Like, what did you or did not do to put us in a better position? So that's the long-term good. Long-term good means you're going to take this business, and you've actually done fairly well, in the sense that, this is the roughest time in the business, the first 3 years. A part of one of those years was a year of construction. Literally a year. A whole freaking year. So it's like I gotta look at it like that too. It's like, okay, you're still within that 1 year, Mike. Like, it don't just come that easy. You know, it's gonna be a while. So there's that. And that's kind of the long-term good. And like, it doesn't sound good, but it's really just saying, hey, this is like a newborn toddler or whatever. You can't expect it to walk and talk as soon as it hits the ground. You have to be able to support it. But going back to long-term bad, or actually going into short-term bad, if you can't support and sustain a business, or can't support and sustain an endeavor in some way, shape, or form, excuse me, you have to really assess what the business is doing and what it isn't doing, and say to yourself, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Let's cut our losses, and this is the short term. Because that short term could actually be days, it could be weeks, months, it could be years, you know, like within the first 5 years. Some people make profit as soon as they open. Some people really don't. So when you look at all of this stuff, you have to scrutinize every little thing to the best of your ability. So that's why you have to look at it and say, hey, listen, the short-term bad is the business is not doing well enough. We're still within the first 3 years. We'll have a net loss, but we won't have a total loss or complete loss, or we won't walk away with nothing in our pocket, or we won't walk away with immense debt or a large amount of debt. We could walk away with some debt, or we could walk away at least with our debt satisfied and break even in a sense, right? In a business is long term. You're looking at having a business mainly for a minimum of 5 years, and that's very short term, right? Really, I really want to have this business for 15 was actually my plan. But that's the long term. In the short term, it's got to make money, and you got to make it to even, you know, a point where you can really make some money off of it and say, hey, this makes sense. Let's keep doing it. Short-term good. So short-term good is businesses making money. Turnaround is pretty quick in terms of the two profit stage is pretty quick, and you have all these funds available to you, right? And that's the short-term good. That does not always happen, especially with brick and mortar. You have to do things like pay insurance. You have to do things like make sure repairs are there, and things like that. But if the business does well, then you have all that rental income or that income available to you, and it's another income stream. You know, I was standing to make about $2,000 or so a month, and I'll get into profit margins here in a second. But I was standing to make about $2,000 or so a month, and if we fill the place up, probably about $1,600 really realistically, because most shops only stay full about 70. Your chairs only stay about full 75% of the time. So that's kind of like, okay, you got to look at that. So this brings me into profit margin, and that's it for short-term good. So this brings me into things like profit margins. The profit margin on this business was too low, meaning we have to make that profit, and we have to consistently make that profit, and we have to get to that point of profitability sooner for this business to be sustained. If we do not get to if we do not get to profit sooner, then what's going to happen to us is that we're going to have to actually, pay out of pocket, which is the situation we're in now. So instead of it becoming an asset, it becomes a liability, or instead of it becoming an income stream, it becomes a bill. It becomes an outcome stream. So that was something that I had discussed with the partners, where I knew that beforehand, where I understood the risk and what we were getting into. I was watching something the other day. It's usually people like, you have to be willing to take risks, to make certain things happen. And I was willing to take that risk. Now I'm looking at it like not a regret or I shouldn't have gotten into it. I'm looking at it pragmatically, objectively, whatever word or adjective you want to use, or word or better yet, adjective that you want to use. I'm looking at it like, okay, we need to do something to make a change. And it needs to happen now-ish. So that's why we're going through the process of selling in terms of just getting price discovery. Now, if we get this stuff out there, like with selling, one of the things that you have to do and remember, is that it's selling a business is like selling a home. It does not happen immediately. It does not happen overnight. You have to go through negotiations. Deals fall through. You have to stay around long enough to hold on to the asset, just in case something happens, or something doesn't happen, is a viable case too. So if it doesn't happen for you, or if it doesn't sell, then what are you going to do then? So a part of one of the things that we're doing is, we're still actively looking to fill the shop. And if we can fill the shop, then it becomes even more enticing. But we also have to make our numbers look good. So that's something that I mentioned last night. I was going on, and I was just like, I thought about it. I was like, there's certain things that I didn't say. I was all over the place with it. So I wanted to come back and at least talk about, these long-term bad, long-term good, short-term bad, short-term good. And what you have to do, you have to weigh all these things, because who knows, it might turn around for you in the short term. Kind of seeing the silhouette of my face here. It might turn around for you in the short term, but one thing you have to look at is what if it doesn't? And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And that's my position in the business as a COO, making sure operations work properly. And I'm also the bookkeeper too. So I see the numbers, I see the projections, I see also the behavioral traits of business partners, and what's to be expected, or not what's to be expected, but what I could possibly expect from them, and being honest with them as well, not being timid, not being intimidated by anybody. And talking to them, talking to them with realistic goals, and talking to them with realistic thoughts, and saying, hey, this is what we need to do if we want this to go to this level. So that's where, hey, we're going to have a business meeting on tomorrow now. It is Thursday. So we're going to have a business meeting on Friday and go over these things, and go over and say, hey, listen, if you don't do X, Y is going to happen. And there's any number of possibilities and combinations of X, Y, and even Z or Z. So I wanted to put that out. I'm not going to hold this phone forever. I'm probably close to a quarter mile into this walk. And I usually like to walk at a faster pace, but I don't want to be huffing and puffing with my 300-pound ass over here. This whole thing's been kind of... It sucks. It does suck. But it's one of those things where it's a lesson. Actually, shout out to Dollar Will, because a part of my thought process is we ain't hodling shit over here, Dollar Will says we ain't hodlers over here. I'm a hodler. Will admit it. I'm a hodler of cryptocurrencies. So we're not trying to really hodl shit over here. And that's one of the things that I'm looking at with business. It's less than 3 years. This is well within the 3-year mark for the business. 1 year of construction. We're going on 2 years, would be May 2019. Yeah, so we're 1 year. no, May. We opened 2018. We started April 2017. Yeah, so we started construction April 2017. Finished construction and got ready to open May 2018. That's 1 year. May 2019 has already passed. That's 2 years. So we're going into our 3rd year, which would be May 19th, 2019, I should say. May 2019 would be our 3rd year. So this is the time when businesses don't make it. And I don't want to get to the point where we just completely fail, but at the same time, sometimes you do have to stay. Sometimes you're forced to stay too. Because just like the last video, I said, selling a sack of shit. If you think it's a sack of shit, what do you think the buyer sees? And that's kind of what we're looking at. We're gonna have to make this look a lot better, but at the same time, can we survive until then? Anyways, I was saying bye earlier. This time I mean it. All right, as always, thanks for listening. Have a good one. I think you can see my face. Okay, you can't. Bye.